Alright, welcome back to Honored Madman. Originally we had a snake themed video to do today, and that'll actually be tomorrow, because Shogun had a new episode last night, and I've been wanting to talk about this show for like a week now. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Shogun. Now, there's been countless TV series that I've been wanting to do videos about. Now, I've talked for a long time about wanting to do one on Blackthorne, on Peacemaker. Even in the past few months after watching Season 5 of Fargo and how it was such a great improvement on the garbage that was Season 4, or True Detective and how bad and soulless that new season was. There's honestly been a lot of TV shows I want to talk about, but it's just hard because when I do spend the time, it usually gets copyright claimed because I'm using clips, and it becomes this whole headache. So then I go back into doing my lore videos because, why waste time making one of these show ones when, that's going to happen. But this is a show I really, really like, and it's honestly probably the best premiere I've seen in at least 10 years. Episode 3 just came out last night. I guess I waited a little too long to talk about the premiere, so we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes. But more than that, like the setting and some of the little interesting things I learned about the production from watching all these behind the scenes things that you can find on YouTube. Yeah, but first let's break down the backdrop and the setting that the story takes place in. So it takes place during the year 1600, I believe. And sometime before this, the Portuguese and the Spanish discovered, in parentheses or quotations, Japan, and established a trade relationship with them, mainly because the Spanish sailors also had a trade relationship with China, who the Japanese hated but highly valued their silks. So it was a relationship built out of necessity. The Portuguese began building bases and missionaries in Japan and starting to convert the local population to Christianity. Although most ignored it or treated it with outright contempt or scorn, the missionaries were actually quite successful in their efforts. And not only that, the church itself began to try and subvert the rule of Japan through its religion. In fact, the Pope has essentially claimed Japan for settlement without any okay from the Japanese or even letting them know. And they've been pretty successful at it too, by its conversion of several of the ruling daimyos and lords. It was definitely a interesting period in time. Now, Lord Toranaga, who is played excellently by Sanada, possibly the whole main reason this show got made because of how involved he was in producing it. Toranaga is a fictionalized version of Ieyasu Tokugawa, and in the show he's depicted as an extremely cunning political manipulator and a warrior, a wise leader, and basically this is a guy who was traded as a hostage to his father's enemy when he was a kid, and that kind of taught him a lesson. Enemies are everywhere and friends were nowhere. But he's found himself in a rather frustrating situation at the start of the series. His main political rival has managed to basically win over all the other members of this ruling council of Japan over to his side against Toranaga and are trying to impeach him. They know he's the most powerful, he has the largest fief, the most secure, and above all else an actual claim to the shogunate of Japan because of his old Minowara bloodline, which I believe would be a fictional version of the Minamoto family. But I could be wrong, I'm a bit rusty when it comes to my Japanese history. Anyway though, just as Ishido and the other lords have believed they've outplayed Toranaga, something unexpected happens. A Dutch ship crewed by the Englishmen washes ashore in a fishing village in Izo, which itself was a part of the fief of Lord Kashigi Yabushige, who in my opinion is this show's best and most interesting character, hands down. Literally, in a show full of great characters that are all expertly portrayed, this guy manages to stand out. So Yabushige, he's really not like other samurai from this era. He kind of defies characterization with his actions, in my opinion. Yeah, sure, some might view him as a snake. He sort of only looks out for him and the things under his power. But from what we see in the 3rd episode, that is exactly what Toranaga advises his son to do. You can't think like enemies and friends. You got to think only for yourself because you got no one else in this world. And part of me thinks that's why Toranaga keeps Yabushige around. Yeah, he might be a bit opportunistic and even at times psychotic. And just as much as he's a little schemer, he's also a great warrior. And also, as far as character goes, he's also pretty likable and funny. Like, for example, in the newest episode that aired last night, it opens with him writing his will, claiming it's probably the best they'd ever done. Now this is important because so far throughout the show, Yabushige has been shown to have an obsession with death, or at the very least the moment when someone's finally accepted their death and dies. He boils alive one of the English crewmen of the Dutch ship, and like all other deaths he's ordered, he takes notes on it. Although more often than not, he's disappointed at the results of these experiments. claiming they always tend to go out in an inarticulate way. Now later in that very same episode, Yabushige faces his own death, but more on that in just a second. So the pilot of the Dutch vessel, a John Blackthorne, an Englishman, is brought before Yabushige alongside a Portuguese priest translator. Now Blackthorne immediately shows disgust towards the priest and his Catholic ways, and essentially knows that whatever he says won't be translated honestly because, well, he and the priest are religious enemies. Blackthorne is an English Protestant and the priest, like all Portuguese, was Catholic. So they start arguing with each other, and Yabushige kind of picks up on this and asks the translator why he's mad. The translator tries to call Blackthorne a pirate, and Yabushige asks for proof. When things look like they're not about to go Blackthorne's way, he makes a Hail Mary move, and one of my favorite scenes of the show. He grabs the priest's crucifix and stomps it into the mud and says he will not be spoken for by Catholics. This act greatly amuses Yabushige, who orders the barbarian, as Blackthorne is being called, into his quarters to be bathed and cleaned up a little bit. The priest isn't happy though. He still demands that Blackthorne, or at least, one of the sailors dies. So Yabushige is like, alright, you can have one, but we're going to kill them in my very special way. Which, as I already mentioned, is the boiling little bit I talked about. Anyway, though, Yabushige, because, he's such a suspicious character, has got spies in his village on behalf of Lord Toranaga, who is informed of the foreign ship's arrival. So after being informed that he's being taken to Osaka Castle on behalf of Lord Toranaga, Blackthorne is left in the care of Rodriguez, a Spanish sailor who works for the Portuguese, played by the always excellent Nestor Carbonell, Richard Alpert himself, otherwise known as Mr. Eyeliner. Great actor, great character. He's essentially a Spanish older version of Blackthorne, and they sort of form this grudging friendship. But while they're piloting the ship back to Osaka, they encounter a storm and Rodriguez is washed away. Blackthorne tries to save him, but then when they reach land, he and Yabushige decide to look for Rodriguez to see if he washed ashore on the island. They find him, but he's at the bottom of a cliff, and they won't let Blackthorne go down to go get him because of how valuable he is. They can't afford to let the Anjin be harmed because he's the prize for their lord. Anjin means pilot, and it's what they use to refer to Blackthorne as. So he essentially challenges Yabushige to go down there and bring Rodriguez back up, since he volunteered to go look for him in the first place, even if it was on Blackthorne's suggestion. But while rappelling, he takes a tumble and falls and is sort of about to be washed away by the current. And in those split seconds, I believe Yabushige feels he's in the moment that he's always, researched, the exact moment when one meets their death. And he was fully prepared to meet his own death with a sword in his hand because he took out his little wakizashi and was prepared to commit seppuku as opposed to drowning to death, which I guess is the definite preferable alternative. This act profoundly affects Blackthorne, who bows to Yabushige when he comes back up. This sort of gets Blackthorne to start to see the contrast between the serene beauty of Japanese culture and the brutality of it all. It's some really great stuff. No, I don't want to just, recap and transcribe these episodes or anything like that. I'm just trying to pull out useful examples. But the whole first episode was a ride, the second one was a ride, and the third one was. This show really does have it all. It's got great dialogue, fucking excellent acting, great set design with this incredible attention to detail. I mean, this is cinema. The entire cast is excellent. I mean, Toranaga is at the same time wise, cunning, a noble warrior, a political manipulator. The dude is just great. It's a role that could only be played by Hiroyuki Sanada, and he absolutely kills it. According to the behind the scenes stuff, he genuinely found the character compelling and wanted to play him, and he wanted to do it right, and it really pays off. It's a great fucking performance. And then there's Cosmo Jarvis, who I've only seen in I think 2 different things. He was in 1 or 2 episodes of Raised by Wolves, which was an HBO sci-fi kind of weird show, but I found it pretty interesting at the same time. But he wasn't a main character. He was really 1 or 2 episodes. He was an important figure in the lore of the show, but he wasn't physically in a lot of episodes. And he was also in Peaky Blinders, I think season 4 or 5, where he played Barney, the crazy war buddy of Tommy Shelby's. Both times he did great, but he didn't really there wasn't, a whole lot devoted to his characters. But in this, he absolutely kills it. He fully embodies this very Edward Kenway style character, a British dude who fell in love with the sea, and, he just loves sailing. He's a bit of a rogue. He starts off as like this uncultured, swine, but throughout the few episodes that we've seen even so far, he's gradually becoming, more enthralled by the Japanese culture and their, foreign way of life. He actually sees the beauty of it all. He kind of sees it as a better way of life than what he came from. I mean, he's not there yet, but, And helping Blackthorne come to see the beauty of Japan is Mariko, who herself is also a really interesting character played by Anna Sawai. She plays the daughter of the guy who actually betrayed the legendary previous shogun Oda Nobunaga, and it isn't exactly clear how her father died. It's said that he either committed seppuku or was killed by bandits. Either way, though, she wanted to follow her dad into death, but Toranaga would not allow her to do so, mainly because in the show, he's kind of against all of this senseless death that happens in Japanese culture. He seems to find it unnecessary. The other important thing about Mariko is that she's a Christian and that she speaks English and Portuguese, so she's able to act as a translator for Blackthorne and Toranaga, and she's married to this very traditional samurai who is the son of Toranaga's top advisor. They definitely set the dude up to be a bit of a dick, but he has a really cool scene in the newest episode that reminds me of something out of a Yakuza game, specifically that Ishin remake. She's doing a good job of portraying, going from an absolute disgust of Blackthorne to, growing fond of him. I mean, a lot of their dialogue is really funny. I mean, that's another thing about this show. It's actually really fucking funny. And not in like an unintentional way. Like it all feels really fitting to the setting and the characters. But yeah, Anna Sawai also great. I haven't really seen her in anything. I think I've seen her in like a voice role or something, but she is absolutely great in this. I guess I can kind of hear a little bit of her, I think, New Zealand accent when she speaks English, but that's fine. Doesn't stand out in the show, really. She hasn't had a whole lot to do yet, but I know she's an important character in the novel, so we'll get to see a lot more, and I definitely like her performance so far. She's great. She completely kills it. And of course, the performance I've been dick riding throughout this entire video would be Tadanobu Asano playing Yabushige. This is another actor who I've only seen in a few roles. I think he was in Silence and that movie Kate, and of course he played Raiden in the new Mortal Kombat, and he's great in all those, especially the Raiden role. And I can't really remember Silence that well, but I thought he was pretty good in that too. But this character, man, he's charismatic. He's, got all these funny facial expressions and reactions to stuff. All these little character intricacies that are portrayed so well. And as you're watching the first 3 episodes, you're probably wondering, where his loyalties lie. Is it to Ishida? Is it to Toranaga? And then you realize that he's just out for himself, and that's really the only person he's truly loyal to. He's definitely going to be a fun character to watch throughout the show. And all of the supporting cast as well, they fucking do great, especially Hiromatsu, the guy who plays the priest does a really good job. It's all just handled so well, and honestly the crew must be just as good, because look at how well the cinematography is, the action sequences. You can definitely tell the production went really in depth. There's actually like a 2-part YouTube video, I believe, that Hulu released, which talks about Hiroyuki Sanada's involvement in the production and just how hands-on he was. He was essentially basically involved with every step of the way in production. He was totally dedicated to making this, and again, I've already said it, but it really shows and it really paid off. The set design is immaculate. It really does look like this was filmed in feudal Japan. There's like a distinct beauty to just all of these shots and how the landscapes and the buildings and the interiors just all look. And interestingly enough, the violence is also depicted in a similar way. It's just some of the best, cinematic violence I've ever seen. It's brutal, yet not gratuitous. There's like a beheading in the first episode that is probably one of the best TV beheadings or movie beheadings I've ever seen. There's also a really nice scene where there's a betrayal of some bandits and then the systematic slaughter of the aforementioned bandits, which I really liked. But the episode that has the most action, hands down, is episode 3, and there's just a lot of stuff to like about these sprawling, set pieces. 2 factions, turning on each other in the heat of battle. It's all just really, really good stuff, and I don't want to, not do it justice, because it's really fucking good. Honestly, I have nothing but praise for this show, and this is another great Japanese-American co-production like Tokyo Vice. In fact, this might actually be a little bit better, but I still love Tokyo Vice, and I really hope it manages to get another season. But this shit is really good. Either way, though, I highly recommend watching the YouTube videos about the production of this show, because it is really, really interesting, especially those two about Hiro Sanada. There's also another one that talks about histories, and it gives you a lot of background information that pertains to the setting of the story and what was going on in the world during that time. Not saying you need any of that to understand the show, because it works as a standalone piece as well. My dad, he never gets involved or watches the behind the scenes stuff, or reads the novels that these things are based on, and he absolutely loved it. I mean, so it definitely works on a purely cinematic format. Now me, I've never read the book, and I haven't watched the 1980 miniseries, but I am gonna read the book and watch that after this is all come out. Mainly because I don't want to spoil myself. I know a little bit about the historical versions of these characters, but not this fictional version, But that's one thing I love. I love historical fiction. I like when it goes really over the top, like how like Neo does. Blackthorne is based on William Adams. In Neo 1, you play as William Adams, but it's not quite the way that it played out in history. Just like how in Shogun, it's not quite the way it played out in history. It's just really interesting stuff. I can't wait to do a more in-depth video about it after it's all out. Anyway, though, I appreciate you guys listening to my ramble. I hope you found it at least somewhat amusing. If you liked it, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. And if you like hearing me ramble on about the various subjects I find interesting, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out. Also, let me know in the comments what you thought about Shogun, if you watched it, or if you're gonna watch it, or if you've seen the 1980 miniseries or read the book. Those insights could be helpful. I guess I would say try not to spoil anything, but it is an adaptation, so we don't know how much of the source material they're changing in entirety. I'm told there are already some interesting and changes for the better so far. Either way, though, I'm interested in hearing any and all insights. But as I always say, I got a lot of good stuff coming. Hopefully that upload schedule gets back to its good old way. I got a Elden Ring Serpent video coming your way, hopefully tomorrow. It should be tomorrow. Then followed by a bonus video, then the Aldia stuff. Then I wanted to talk about that Fallout series that's about to come out. Whole bunch of great stuff, but without further ado, let's have that outro and then the final thoughts, shall we? What a great show, though. It honestly makes me wish I would have taken more footage when I was playing through some of these games like Neo and Sekiro before I started making videos. But now I guess is as good a time as ever to play those games again, because they could produce some pretty good video ideas. I actually still need to play the Ghost of Tsushima one, because I bought it, or I know I got it as a Christmas gift, the director's cut a while back, but I've never actually really played it past the first little beginning sequence, so I'm going to have to do that at some point too. I got such a big backlog of games, and here I am rambling again, but I'll be seeing you guys real soon with that Serpent video, then the bonus one, so as always, you guys have a good one, and I will see you next time. Peace.